Hello, bridge builders! I'm here with some exciting news. The first volume of interviews is now available on Amazon.com. The link can be found at eatlunchandboardgame.com. I promise that all proceeds from sales of this book will go right back into this podcast and channel. Whether that is new and better audio equipment for the podcast, or video equipment for the YouTube channel, or even more games to review, the money will not be wasted. Click over to Amazon and get your copy of Eat Lunch and Board Game, the first course today. And thank you for supporting the show. When you think of classic games, what comes to mind? Monopoly, Risk, Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, and of course, Clue. It is unfortunate that Clue doesn't get more respect in today's board gaming community. The playtime is short, the rules are simple, and damn it, it is just plain fun. We had a copy of Clue when I was growing up. I'm the oldest of three, and my sister, brother, and I would play Clue for hours. That is the best part of the game. You can just sort the cards back out, draw a new set of three, and then start the game over in about 3 minutes. So Clue was designed by Anthony Pratt and his wife Elva in his basement during the German air raids of England during World War II. They were inspired by murder mystery novels of the time. In 1944, Anthony applied for a patent for his game that he was calling Murder with an exclamation mark. Then the Pratts took it to Waddington's, basically the Parker Brothers of England. Waddington's bought it immediately, and then they renamed it to Cluedo, which is a play on words. Waddington's and Parker Brothers had a partnership and shared games, so Parker Brothers became the U.S. publisher for the new Whodunnit game. It came out in 1949, a few years later than anticipated due to post-war shortages. The Pratts took a one-time payout of £5,000 instead of a continuous royalty like the one that Charles Darrow took with Monopoly. Pratt was told by Waddington's that the game was not selling well, especially in the United States. That payment is roughly £105,000 or $135,000 in today's money. They never created another game, but hey, if you're only going to have one game in you, it might as well be Clue. Here are some fun facts about the game. Originally, the game had 10 characters. Mr. Brown, Mr. Gold, Ms. Gray, and Mrs. Silver were cut. Instead of 7 rooms, there were 11. A gun room and cellar were some that were eliminated. An axe, poison, bomb, syringe, fireplace poker, and my personal favorite, a shillelagh, were some of the unused weapons. Some of these unused items have appeared in different succeeding versions or editions. Few games have sparked a Hollywood movie. Clue was the first. Then Ouija and Battleship. I guess you could count Jumanji, but it was based on a board game that is not real, and it's from a children's book. The same with Zathura. Then there was the Dungeons & Dragons movie from 2000, but the less said about that, the better. Quick side note, there was a cartoon series of Dungeons & Dragons, but I haven't watched it either. I have seen the Jumanji, and the first one with Kevin Hart and company. I have sadly even seen and had to review Battleship. The rest, nope. DVD was before my board game obsession, and I heard that it was really bad, so I did not bother. I have not seen the recent one either that came out in 2023, though I do have some high expectations for it. Ouija, well, it is just not my type of movie. Clue came out in 1985, and it is amazing. I recently rewatched it for the first time in close to 25 years. The wife had never seen it, and I had just finished reading John Michael Garapi's book, and Amazon Prime had the movie streaming. I felt like the stars were aligned. All I can say is, wow. Simply, wow. It holds up so well. The cast is amazing. The score is iconic. The ending is frenetic and worth the watch. It is less than 95 minutes. It has a 7.3 rating out of 10 on IMDb with over 90,000 ratings. It is a great comedy, whodunit, an adaptation with no equal. Clue the board game holds a 5.7 with 18,000 ratings. I guess IMDb has more users than Board Game Geek. I do feel that the classic games do not get their credit. When Clue came out, it was revolutionary. It sold millions of copies in its first few years just in the US. Think about that. Clue sold millions in consecutive years. Games these days are lucky to sell 100,000 copies total. A decent Kickstarter will sell roughly 3,000 to 5,000 copies. Everyone likes to crap on these classics, but they were selling millions of copies a year for years on end. Clue is a fantastic game, and I wish that it got more praise and attention, and that is what I am here to do in this episode. Alright, welcome back to Lunch and Board Game. I'm your host, Adam Collins, and let's take a look at the rule clarity for Clue. Oddly, the rule clarity is quite clear for a game of its age, but this could be due to its age, and that there has been multiple iterations over time, and plenty of years to hone the game rules to make sense. I don't know what the original rules look like, but I know that the ones that I have in my most recent sets, I don't read them all, are very clear. However, like Monopoly, there are house rules that can get in the way of the intended gameplay. Time to explain to newcomers. I believe that it would be hard to find a lot of people that are not familiar with Clue, but I'm sure they are out there. Actually, I just learned that a coworker of mine has never played. I learned this while explaining Mystery of the Abbey, which is Clue-like, and he told me he had never played Clue. There is very little time required in explaining the game of Clue. A lot of it becomes very self-evident as you play. It is a mystery where you're trying to use your skills of deduction to solve the crime of Whodunnit. Along the way, you're trying to set up red herrings to throw your opponents off the scent. You also need to remember who has shown you what card and determine what card they could have shown others. Literally, this is a 5-minute explanation of how to play. The rest is up to the player's ability. Gameplay. These are the rules per the edition that I have, and that I considered standard and the official rules for what it's worth. To set up, separate the cards into 3 different categories: the suspect, the weapon, the room. Shuffle and secretly remove 1 from each of these categories and place it in the usually supplied confidential folder. This folder is then placed on the staircase in the center of the board. Place each character pawn on their respective starting position. Miss Peacock has a slight advantage, being 1 square closer to a room than the rest. Scatter the weapons into the rooms around the board. Each player will then assume the role of one of the pawns. They will also need a solution sheet, writing utensil, and a screen of some sort if available. First player, usually Miss Scarlet and then moving clockwise, rolls the die. The player's pawn moves the amount shown on the die. Each square counts as 1 movement. Movement can be up, down, left, or right, but not diagonal. That's a house rule that I disagree with wholeheartedly. A pawn cannot move into the same square twice in a turn. A pawn cannot move through or end its turn on a space already containing a pawn. It does require 1 movement to enter the room. You cannot stop in the doorway and slide in. If a pawn ends its turn in a room, the player may now make a suggestion. A suggestion includes 1 suspect pawn, 1 weapon token, and the room in which the accuser is. The pawn of the accused and the weapon are moved into this room. I like to remove any unnecessary weapons to another room for clarity. I also like to put the accused and the weapon in the middle of the room, and any other pawn that happens to be in the room, well, I like to put them on the furniture if possible. Why? Again, clarity, and it looks like the others are just sitting around staring at the accused. Once all 3 elements have been named and moved into the appropriate room, the player to the left of the active player must show 1, and only 1, of the cards from the suggested scenario. You do not have to show all of the ones you might have in your possession. Also, please make sure that only the accusing player sees the card. If the player to the left cannot prove the suggestion wrong, it moves to the next player in clockwise order. The same rules apply. This continues until a player can show 1 of the cards. If no one can show a card proving the scenario wrong, the active player either has the correct solution or has been playing mind games. If the active player believes they have the solution, they may make an accusation. They state the suspect, weapon, and room. This can be done in any room. That is according to the rules. A suggestion must come from the room the pawn is in, but the accusation can come from anywhere. Then, only the player making the accusation may look into the confidential folder and verify the 3 cards set aside at the start of the game. If the 3 cards match their suggested solution, they win and show the cards to everyone. If they are wrong, they are out of the game, but must continue showing cards to the other players to prove their suggestions incorrect. There are also some small rules to keep in mind. If your pawn is called into a room, you can stay in that room and make an accusation of your own on your next turn. You must leave a room before you can make another suggestion in the same room, but you cannot leave and re-enter the same room on the same turn. Don't forget that the corner rooms have a secret passage to the opposite corner of the board, and you can move diagonally to quickly traverse the board. Replayability. Well, as the math would explain, 6 suspects, 6 weapons, times 9 rooms, there are 324 possible solutions to a game of Clue. But that does not equate to replayability, though. The game is the same each time. However, the replayability comes from its quick playtime and the people you play with. Different people have different approaches and different strategies. The more you play Clue, the better you'll get at deducing what is going on with other people's note sheets. Every few years, I found myself wanting to go back to Clue, and I will play it a dozen or so times because it is truly a classic game and it has that replayability. Lunchtime potential. The game is listed to have a 45-minute playing time. That seems a bit high to me, but I typically only play with 3 or 4 people total, so it tends to move faster. I would say that the game is better with more players so that it does take longer and each player gets a chance to really get the feel for the detective aspect of the game. Even with a complete set of 6 people playing, there should be no trouble in completing this game in an hour. Artwork. This is just outright impossible to judge. There have been so many different artists over so many different decades that have worked on this wonderfully classic game. The versions I have some great artwork, and they don't even look like the same game. So judging the artwork basically comes down to what version you have. Other. As usual, you can go to Etsy and search for Clue and get hundreds of hits. There are all kinds of things related to the movie. There are t-shirts, stickers, hoodies, mugs, new tokens. Whatever you're looking for, you can find it. There are even a few cross-stitch designs that I might or might not have bought and intend to make. Update, I did buy them, and I made the first one and gave it to my sister. Bang for the buck. Today, you can get the classic game of Clue from any big box retailer for about $12 for a base version. I personally own a copy from the early 2000s when Hasbro released its classic games in wooden boxes that resemble books. This is a nice set, but a bit expensive to go purchase now. I would recommend a good solid edition from Walmart or Target that will run about $20. They will probably hold up better and they have a little bit better production quality. My childhood copy is the box art featured on the Board Game Geek page, only it has been labeled in the corner calling it quote-unquote retro. I do not find this funny or amusing as I do not think I am that old. The classicness and simpleness of Clue should make this game a staple in any collection. I believe you and your coworkers will get your money's worth. It is an approachable game that offers a lot of fun. You will also get to know who has the better analytical brain. Component quality. As with the artwork, this really varies on the edition that you have. For the most part, all the pawns are pretty standard. Some games come with cardboard standees. Some come with actual figures of the characters. Most of the time, all the weapons come as die-cast metal with a plastic rope. The cards are all pretty standard quality along with the board. As I mentioned, most of them will come with a confidential folder of some sort that you can put the solution in. and most of them will come with their own D6. And all versions come with their own D6 that could range from engraved to screen printed. It just, again, depends on what version you have. Other versions. There are no expansions, but there are countless skins that have been applied to the Clue board similar to that of Monopoly. You can find a Simpsons, Supernatural, Star Wars, and even the Golden Girls. There are, however, other versions of the game. I have tracked down a few, and I have spent some money, don't tell the wife, to get my hands on even more. Some are more successful than others. Some might have already been sold. Some might have already been played and sold to pay for more versions. I will cover these in chronological order, not the order in which I played them. First up, Clue, the VHS game from 1985. An old coworker actually gave me her copy of this version that she picked up at a thrift shop. I just need to dust off the old VCR and replay this masterpiece. I remember playing it at a friend's house when I was in grade school, and it was a hoot. Other than that, I don't really remember much. I mean, it was years ago. Clue Master Detective from 1988. Master Detective has a simple change. It simply added more suspects who could have done it. It added more suspects who could have done it, more weapons and ways that Mr. Body could have expired, and more locations as to where it could have happened. The new characters are also color and fruit oriented. You have Madame Rose, Sergeant Grey, Monsieur Brunette, and Miss Peach. The weapons consist of a horseshoe and poison, and some new rooms are the courtyard, gazebo, drawing room, carriage room, trophy room, and the fountain. Gone are the hall, lounge, ballroom, and the study is now called the studio. With the 30 cards, there are now 960 possible solutions compared to the original's 324. Other than that, the game remains the same down to the Snoop action. There are 9 spaces featuring a magnifying glass on them. If you move onto one during your movement, you do not have to end your turn on it. You can announce that you are snooping and draw a random card from an opponent. While this version does not offer much new in the form of gameplay, the additional 9 cards makes the game take a little longer, but also allows more players, now up to 10, and a little bit more fun with the snooping action. I've only played this a few times, but never with more than 5 players. I think 10 players would take too long, as most players would only start with 2 cards, but I can imagine how valuable the snoop spaces would then become. Clue Master Detective is still in production. It has been bought and produced by Winning Moves Games. They are an interesting company that buys up the rights to older games and puts them back on the market. They did that with another great Whodunnit game, 13 Dead End Drive, which I will feature in an episode here soon. The MSRP for Master Detective is $29.95, but a savvy buyer can find it for about $22 or less. An original is not too much to buy off of eBay or other online sources. Is it worth the money? If you find yourself with more than 5 or 6 players a lot, then yes, this would make a nice addition to your office gaming library. Clue, the Great Museum Caper from 1991. I found this version at a board game flea market event at a local game shop. Someone posted pictures of the tables and I saw the Great Museum Caper just sitting there. I immediately jumped in my car and drove out to the shop to procure it. It was a steal at $15. I wish I could say that that was the only game I bought while at the flea market, but that would be lying. This version really has nothing to do with the Clue game. It really feels like an IP slapped on to make a game sell better, but that is fine with me. I remember playing this game with some childhood friends as well. What I remembered most about it was the hidden movement mechanic. It was the first time I had seen this as I played Scotland Yard later in my life. In Clue, the Great Museum Caper, you are either one of the classic characters of Clue or the thief. As the thief, you are trying to move through the museum and steal paintings and get out before being caught by the Clue detectives. I do plan to do a full episode on this at a later time. Suffice it to say, it holds up well. Clue Junior, the Case of the Missing Cake. As far as Junior or My First games go, Clue Junior is very successful. It succeeds where many of these styles of games fail. It is fun for the parents to play too. There's enough skill and strategy in Clue Junior to keep parents engaged for the short 20-minute playing time. There are a lot of these style games that I feel are totally useless or have a very short shelf life. Games that I feel if your child can play the junior version, they can probably handle the regular version too. Or after they play the junior version a few times, they can graduate to the regular version and there's no need to keep the junior version around. Also, I believe it is fair to say that this specific junior version from 2003 is not the first, last, or only Clue Junior edition, but to my knowledge, they just changed the theme from missing cake to broken toy, missing pet, hidden toys, etc., etc. Yeah, with Clue Junior, the child gets the feel for deductive reasoning and strategizing. There are no cards. Each player pawn has a plastic stand. There are furniture pawns that have different color bases. As your pawn lands on certain circles, you can look at the bottom of these stands. The stands could have a sticker that has a time, drink, crumbs, or be blank. You're trying to find the person with the crumbs, deduce what time and what beverage they enjoyed the cake. The game is a blast to play. The only real drawback is that the detective pads are in black and white. This can lead to a problem trying to figure out which beverage is being shown. Luckily, a BGG user has created and shared a color version of the pad. If you have young ones, Clue Junior is a great investment, but maybe not the best game to play at your office. Next up, Clue FX from 2003. In Clue FX, the game board talks to you. I picked this up off of Facebook Marketplace. This is an interesting idea, though it only plays 2 to 4 players, yet the 2-player version is not a weird one. In this version, you are a guest at a gathering at Tudor Mansion. Mr. Body's lawyer goes missing and is found dead. You are one of 4 guests, not suspects. These guests are Lord Grey, Lady Lavender, Prince Azure, and Miss Peach. You're trying to travel the board to locate the 8 suspects who are trying to avoid you, the standard characters from the classic game plus Rusty. You're trying to make suggestions like the original game to come to your final accusation. Well, there are a lot of twists to this game. The first main one is that the game talks and electronically is part of the game. The game board has a cardboard and plastic Tudor Mansion at one end. The shrubbery row, well, they're actually buttons that help you operate the game. The player pawns all have a magnetic of sorts on the bottom, and the game talks to you. The 9 locations on the board and the 4 starting locations for the pawns in the middle have a special login space. When entering a location, you press your pawn down and the mansion talks to you. The object of the game is to find who did the murder, with what weapon, and where it took place, the same as always. The twist is, on this one, you must find Inspector Brown, who has been wandering the estate, and be in the same location as him to solve the crime. In order to do this, you must listen and take notes as to his location and when he left. He can only go clockwise or counterclockwise from whence he left. The 8 suspects will also move around the board. When you enter a location, the mansion will tell you if anyone is there. If no one is there, you may search the area to see if anyone is hiding or make a suggestion the old-fashioned way. Why would you want to find a suspect? Well, to set up and start the game, you secretly deal 1 weapon, 1 location, and 1 suspect into the confidential folder. Then, before dealing the leftover cards to the player, you shuffle them and place 1 card in each suspect folder. So, when you locate that suspect, you can look in their folder to see what card and information they have. Throughout the game, you will hear sounds that alert you that some character has moved to a certain location. On your turn, you can move to any location you want. There are no dice. Pay attention to the sounds. They can be very helpful. They also can rearrange the order on which players go. In the end, this game is a lot of fun. We played this at the office. It was well received, though a bit complicated to get moving. I played it with 3 other people, making all 4 players going, and we still finished it well under an hour. I love this version, and I can't understand why it did not do better. The fact that the game itself is involved to control certain aspects of the game is great. Each round, everybody gets a turn, but the round might be in a different order. The game announces whose turn it is. To me, this is now one of my favorite ways to play Clue, and it was well worth the $15 I paid for it. Clue, the DVD game from 2005. This was my first Facebook Marketplace steal of a deal for a Clue game, though I have yet to really get a chance to put it to use, as I need to get a DVD player and some people together to play it. Also in 2005 came Clue Mysteries. I had to change this from too expensive to a $5 pickup off Facebook Marketplace. I haven't dug too far into this, but it seems like a bunch of different clue mysteries that you have to solve, kind of like a choose your own adventure, where once you solve one, you've already solved it, but once you play through all the scenarios, the game is done, but there are plenty of scenarios to play. Clue Discover the Secrets, 2008. In Discover the Secrets, there is a deck of intrigue cards. During the standard setup, each player selects their pawn and takes their profile card. These cards give each player a unique one-time special action for the game. One weapon, one suspect in one room, or placed in the envelope, and it is placed in the pool in the center of the board. The game plays pretty much the same with a few small exceptions. First, one of the dice has a question mark on it. If this is rolled, the player draws the top intrigue card. These are either good, things like allowing the owner to take another turn, add 6 to the roll, or not answer a rumor, meaning they can pass if they don't want to show a card from a suggestion. Or they can be a clock. There are 8 clock cards. If one is drawn, it is immediately turned up and placed under the edge of the board for all to see. Whoever draws the 8th clock card, well, they're the next victim, and that player is out of the game, placing all their cards face up for all to see. There are also question mark squares on the board that allow you to draw an intrigue card by choice. You can also force your opponents to draw one by moving their pawns into your room for a rumor. The last difference in this version requires you to go to the pool to make your final accusation. In the first game I played at my office, the winner rolled and started for the pool. We had 7 clocks showing and 5 cards left in the intrigue deck. He rolled a question mark, but no clock. He then played an intrigue card that allowed him to take another turn. Had he rolled a question mark this time, he would have died. Instead, he safely made it to the pool, made an accusation, and won the game. I would have made the same accusation on my turn if I could have rolled a 6 or higher. I was so close. Discover the Secrets has terrible pawns. They're harder to see than they should be with their opaque standee on the colored stand. There are 9 weapons that include a lot of classics like the knife, candlestick, and rope, but there are some fun new ones like the axe, a dumbbell, and the poison I mentioned earlier. The board layout has 9 rooms like the original, but the walls and doors are harder to differentiate than you would expect. All in all, this was a fun take on Clue. It was supposed to be the new Clue and take over as the basic version of Clue, but it was not the most well received by the Clue aficionados, and they have since gone back to regular Clue. This version is currently out of print, but can be easily found on Facebook Marketplace, eBay, Craigslist, or most consignment shops. On a side note, it did take me 4 tries to get this game. The first person mailed me the wrong version of Clue. The second plane backed out of the deal. The third person was on vacation and let the offer expire. Finally, the fourth person sent it to me from Oregon with no problems. Clue Secrets and Spies from 2009. As you can probably guess, I nicked this off the internet. The first copy I got for like $10 was unopened. However, upon setting it up to play with the son, we realized the blacklight cards for some reason did not work very well. I picked up a replacement set off eBay, and I will do a full episode on this at a later date. I'd like to try to play this with more people, as it does seem more like the Great Museum Caper in the fact that it's a game that they slapped the name Clue onto. Clue Revealing Mirror from 2007. This is a funny little addition that made little to no blip on the Clue radar. This comes with a mirror that you place the cards into, and when you make your final accusation, you basically ask the mirror if you are correct. In reality, you just press a button that reveals the cards, and you check to see if you won or not. It is basically a light box. There are also 9 clue cards, which could tell you to secretly show a card to the person to your left or something like that. The game does come, however, with a nice set of colored pawns that look like their respective people, so you have a purple Mr. Plum and so on. These are nice, but all in all, this version is out of print. Not hard to see why, but it is $10 on Amazon. It would make a decent set given the pawns. You wouldn't even have to use the clue cards in the mirror. You could just play this as a standard base game with the really awesome pawns. I personally do not own this version. Clue Lost in Vegas from 2018. Now, I know that I said I was not into IPs that are just pasted onto the game. And the plot to Lost in Vegas sounds eerily similar to Todd Phillips' 2009 smash hit film The Hangover, but there are two mechanics to Lost in Vegas that drew me to it. The game's story is that you and your friends wake up in your hotel room in Vegas, and your friend, Buddy, not very creatively named, is not with you. You have a stack of Polaroid pictures of locations, characters, and activities. One of each is placed into the hotel key card envelope, and the mystery that must be solved is who saw Buddy last, where was Buddy, and what was Buddy doing? So what made me want a copy of this version of Clue? The first is the timer. This is not a real-time game, but the spinner clock dial is set to 9 a.m. when you wake up, and you have only 8 hours or turns to find Buddy, or you all lose and miss your flight. Yet 8 turns seems like plenty of time, you say. Well, that brings us to the mystery cards. The 2d6 included in the game have a magnifying glass instead of a 1, and if rolled, one of these cards is drawn and resolved. You can lose hours, speeding up the game. You can also run through the deck of only about 9 mystery cards if you rolled a lot of 1s. That adds a bit of urgency and chaos to the game. They can also allow a player who drew it to call a person, place, or goings-on, and if anyone has it, it must be revealed left face up. I loved this version. I actually used this at one of my places of employment as, bridge building. I had people from 3 different departments in there as we tried to solve what happened to poor Buddy last night, and it was great. As far as a different game of Clue, it was pretty much standard fare, but quite enjoyable. The age suggestion of 14 plus seems a bit silly, but I understand it is due to the content of the game. The addition of the clock and the mystery cards was nice. The only real drawback to me was that when calling your bet, your suggestion, there is nothing to represent the goings-on. So when I say, I think it is Rose, at the helicopter pad and getting weird, there's nothing to put on the helicopter pad to signify getting weird. This is where it would have been cheap and easy fix for 6 punch-out chits with the matching picture of the Polaroid. The artwork is better than you would expect, and it fit the theme nicely. I bought my copy off eBay for about $17, and I think it was well worth it. I wish I could say the same for Clue Liar's Edition from 2020. I'm pretty sure this version was designed for, well, you know what, I'm not really sure. It is a strange interpretation of the game. I feel like they tried to capture the fun of the Cheaters Edition of Monopoly, but failed miserably. In Liar's Edition, you have a new deck of cards. This deck is called the Investigation Deck, and it is 50-50, liar cards and not liar cards. After your normal turn, which now just consists of going between rooms, not even using the hallways, you are forced to then play one of the new liar cards. Each person is dealt one at the start of the game. After your normal turn, you must then play your investigation card. This card allows you to take one of 3 actions or not. See, you can still announce that you're going to take the action, whether you have the card or not. You play your investigation card face down. After the other players are given a chance to call you out as a liar, you may proceed with your action. You could move to another room and make another suggestion, or make all players pass 1 card to the left, or peek at 2 cards from any one player. If you're being called out as a liar and you're lying, then one of your cards goes face up for all to see. If you are not a liar, however, the accuser must show the accused a card chosen at random by the accused. Before play passes the next person, a new investigation card is drawn up. This does make for an interesting game of bluffing, but did Clue need bluffing? The game goes much faster now, too. At first, people are scared to hit the button. Oh, I forgot to mention, there is a button that you can hit that literally yells, liar! And it is annoying. At first, people are too scared to hit the button, and the game moves swiftly as people take multiple turns. Then once people get tired of it, the button gets hit a lot, and it is loud. I love the chaos, but not the cacophonous chaos. I picked this version up off eBay on Prime Day for $0. I got a $10 voucher to use on Prime Day, and this seemed like a perfect way to waste it. Turns out I was wrong. I should have just let the coupon go unused. Finally, Clue, the Ghost of Mrs. White. In 2016, Mrs. White was unceremoniously removed and replaced with Dr. Orchid. One day, you're the maid of Mr. Body Manor. The next, you're thrown out with the garbage you used to take care of. So, in an Amazon exclusive, they brought Mrs. White back as a ghost, as the title would imply. And that ghost is there to either help or hurt you in your quest to solve the murder of Mr. Body. Why Amazon? Well, you can ask Alexa to ask Mrs. White for help. Or if you're like me and don't have an Amazon spy bot in your house, you can use a deck of cards to simulate the same thing. When Mrs. White comes into play, you can make an accusation you want, placing Mrs. White's ghost pawn with the pawn of your accused and the weapon of choice into whatever room you want. You do not have to be in it yourself. Then you ask Mrs. White if she will help you, and either Alexa will respond, or you can draw the top card of the deck. These cards or responses can help you by making all players show any of the cards in your guess, or you could have to swap hands with an opponent. This version is cheap and fun. The Mrs. White mechanic is fresh and fun, but like with the revealing mirror, you can just play this game straight up with the original rules. You just don't get the cool pawns like you do in that mirror version. The ghost pawn is awesome, but the rest of the characters are just classic pawns. In summary, what more can I say? What other board game has a cult movie, a few different comic series, a series of children's books, a TV show, and multiple IPs, multiple different versions, and lasted over 70 years? Not even Monopoly can check off all of these boxes. As I mentioned before, I constantly find myself being drawn back to Clue, and I keep playing it and introducing more people to different versions, and continue to keep playing it. I recently picked up the new Clue Signature Edition from the Prime Day this year, and I must say the production quality on that version is through the roof. It is by far the nicest version of Clue I have, and I cannot wait to play it. There is a version of Clue called the Luxury Edition, which retails for like $270, but it comes with faux leather, a nice wooden game board, some tempered glass with 3D rooms underneath, and I don't have the $270 to spend on it. I did recently, like in this week, pick up the newest version of Clue called Clue Conspiracy. It seems amazing. The weird part is it requires 4 to 10 players. In this version, the description reads as follows: as a guest at the lush Blackadder Resort, you discover that someone, maybe even you, wants to murder its manager, Mr. Coral. A series of deadly traps have been planted all over the resort, and someone is armed. Now you must solve the ultimate mystery, but who can you trust? In Clue Conspiracy, players play as Clue characters and take on secret roles on opposing teams. Friends versus the conspiracy. The friends work to save Mr. Coral and uncover who, where, and what of the conspiracy's secret plot, while the conspiracy players try to secretly sabotage the friends and carry out Mr. Coral's murder. I can't wait to get this to the table. I will try to get to it as soon as I can and get an episode put together because it does sound amazing. But in the end, you must get a copy of Clue if you don't have it. It is very approachable because of its age, and you should have no problem getting more people to play. There are dice versions out there, and there are card versions out there. I had a Clue Guess Who version where it was Guess Who, but with Clue. There are so many versions out there. Find the one that fits you and your team and get solving Whodunnit. As usual, you can reach out to me via Facebook at facebook.com/eatlunchandboardgame. You can contact me at poddenbox.com/eatlunchandboardgame. Leave me a message or a game suggestion. You can always email me at eatlunchandboardgame@gmail.com. And remember, board games build bridges. When you're gaming, why not be comfy? Go over to supportplayer.org. Click on the cards, pieces, and dice to get some merch. These t-shirts are some of the most comfortable I have ever worn. That's supportplayer.org, and there's a link on eatlunchandboardgame.com.